Hello, everybody. Welcome to this live chat today, Make It Happen, where we're previewing the different workshops from the event that's happening on the 4th of October. My guest today is Lauren Martin, and Lauren will be talking about crafting messaging that helps sell your products and services. So welcome, Lauren. Welcome to the live.
Hi there, thank you for having me.
I will say there's a little bit of delay on the line, so if you are hearing a little bit of delay, there is a bit of a technical issue, but I'm just going to keep on powering through while we resolve that. Lauren, before we get into today's conversation about crafting messaging, could you just tell us a bit about what you do in your company?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am a copywriter and marketer for businesses in the language education world. So that basically means that I work with clients to write copy and create messaging strategies for their websites, sales pages, launch campaigns, and emails.
Super. Now, I imagine folk who are joining us live, and very warm welcome if you are doing so, you'll probably have lots of questions for your own business and your own messaging and marketing as we chat today. So please don't hesitate to drop comments and questions in the chat. We'll be answering those and making time for those. And also just say hello. It's just really nice to hang out and know that you're spending time with us talking about this topic today. I think the best place for us to start, Lauren, is kind of like just to clarify what we mean about messaging and where these kind of words are hiding, shall we say. What exactly are we talking about today when you talk about like messaging and messaging for your business?
Yeah, it's a good question. So it's definitely like a bit of marketing jargon that you might hear thrown around a bit, but it's much more simple than it sounds. So messaging is essentially all of the words, phrases, the words and phrases you use to talk about your business and your offer. It's kind of your communication strategy. So the way in which you show the value that you provide and give your ideal clients an idea of who your offer is for, why they should buy it, and how it's going to transform their lives or their language journey in some way.
It sounds so easy, doesn't it? Like, yeah, of course, just convey the value of what you do, who you serve, and the transformation. But why is it so difficult? Like, why is this not as easy as it sounds? Make it sound easy, but I know from my own experience that it really isn't easy to get get that good at it.
No, exactly. It's one of those things like when you read good copy, it looks really simple.
Yeah.
You'll see like some of the best slogans. I mean, Nike, for example, their slogan, "Just do it." It's some of the best copy I think I've ever seen. But I know from reading the founder's book that it took them months to come up with that. And that's the thing. It's like once it's there, it's quite simple and it looks obvious because it speaks directly to the right people. But it takes a lot of research and time, brainstorming, experimentation to come up with. And that's because you're trying to capture everything that you're offering in a few words. So it's usually like a maximum of 10.
You know, that's good to know that there's actually a lot of hard work that goes behind those simple, memorable taglines and copy, basically. Nike being a really good example that you just shared there, because I think the interpretation for people that haven't worked or in a copy environment or haven't worked along copywriters like yourself, because it's a simple, so obvious kind of phrasing and it feels so great to read, there can be that interpretation, well, surely it was easy to come up with, but that's not the case at all, is it? The simplest and sometimes shortest, most succinct taglines are, like you said, well researched, drafted, edited, and they take months to develop and test.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, most copywriters or content writers know that the longer the copy is, the easier it is to write typically. And yeah, in reverse, the shorter it is, the harder it is to write because you're trying to condense a big idea into something that's catchy and concise.
So in your experience of working with language educators, like coaches, teachers, trainers, in developing their messaging for their websites, their sales pages, their socials, what they're putting out there to convey their value and what they do, what sort of common challenges are you noticing that people are having when it comes to really getting it right when it comes to their messaging?
I would say the first thing, the most common thing, is that there's just quite a lack of awareness around what messaging is and why it matters. And that's simply because I think like running businesses in the language world is a relatively new thing. So there's not that much education out there about it, and you actually have to go and seek it out yourself if you want to learn about it. So it's not something that you're just going to come across unless you happen to come across a business coach on Instagram or like my profile, for example. So I would say that's the first biggest challenge. And then once people start to understand what messaging and copywriting is, they realize that it's hard and it takes time. And I am sure everyone watching this has very limited time, kind of in between running business, teaching, and doing whatever else you're doing. It can feel like you're just pouring hours down the drain as you try to think of like what to write. So sometimes it's easier to just write whatever comes to mind first, or to follow the lead of some businesses that you've seen who have success. So think of like the big names in our world, the British Council, EF, and things like that. You'll see that like what they're using is clearly working. So some people might just kind of follow their lead and decide to write that as well, or something similar. And that is one of the biggest, say, like mistakes that you could make, because you're not really capturing what's unique about you or what you're offering.
And that's the superpower, isn't it? That a lot of small businesses that we work with, whether it's a edupreneur, as I like to call them, or langpreneur, which I've seen as a new term being thrown around, or a small business owner, is that's your superpower, isn't it? That unique experience that makes you authentic, and the specific niche you work within, that's what you should be showcasing, and those are the people you should be speaking to. Whereas when we look at the larger companies as examples and what they're doing, their marketing, that works for them because they're casting a large net, and they're speaking to a completely different audience and have a different business model as well. So I think that's really good to kind of remind people that just because they're doing well in their pond, so to speak, doesn't mean it's great for your pond that you're in.
Yeah, exactly. And the same applies to other teachers. So perhaps you see somebody who's got a lot of success. They're independent business owners, and they've got a lot of students selling out their courses. Just because something works for them doesn't mean it will work for you. And that is kind of one of the biggest learning curves, I think, because often when you first start writing copy, you need to look to other people for inspiration. Like every good copywriter I know has what's called a swipe file, which is essentially like a bank of copy that they go to look through for inspiration for different ways of writing things. That's not to say you copy it, like I said, you draw inspiration from it. But when you're very new to drafting messaging, it's easy to just rely on what you've got in front of you and try and write your own version of that.
It takes practice, doesn't it, and time to kind of develop your own voice and find what works. And you know what you just described there, I also see that from a audio visual content creation perspective. So for business owners who are creating whether short videos or podcasts or a video series, there is that kind of, I guess it is a great compliment, isn't it, to copy other people or to try the things that work for other people, but then you're kind of left wondering, well, it's not working, and why isn't it working? It's not really speaking to the strengths of the offer and what's specific about that client business relationship that you offer, because while it works for that person, it doesn't work, it's not the right fit for you. It's like a shoe that you think quite fits, but then you're kind of, putting it in. It's not very comfortable to wear, for very long. I have a pair of shoes like that, Could you give some examples? Because I know there's some very common lines of copy that you often see out in the wild where it's like, that doesn't really speak to the business owner's superpower and who they're serving. I know there's a few lines. I think the confident one is one.
The confident one's the one I always bang on about. So like things like getting fluent, taking your language to the next level. It's kind of these vague surface level statements that kind of, when we read it, we kind of know what you mean. Like take your language to the next level, for example, you mean improve it. Great, but we want to know how exactly you're improving it, because every language learner is going to have a slightly different goal, and every course out there is going to be like more suitable to some people than to others. So it's your word's job to essentially tell those people who tell people which offer is right for them, and the way you do that is by getting more specific. So often if you find that something isn't quite landing right and things aren't selling, then it's because that message hasn't quite hit home with the right people.
I love that example of like, get fluent, speak with more confidence, level up. I've been guilty of those phrases myself, the level up one. So if you're watching this and thinking, oh no, don't feel bad. It's sometimes just part of the process and the learning process. And just like anything that we're talking about at Make It Happen, where Lauren will be giving a talk on writing great messaging, it's all something you can learn and you can get better at. So it's not like this magic skill that's hidden away. It's something that you can get better at and your business can thrive as a result. I know that you're giving this talk at Make It Happen. Maybe we could just recap for folk who are joining us today who may not have heard of Make It Happen and what it's all about. Could you just give us an insight to that and how what we're chatting about today connects?
Yeah, absolutely. So Make It Happen is our live in-person event in Warsaw, which I'm really excited about. We're hosting it together with, obviously, me, Laura, Rachel Roberts and Ola Kowalska. It's taking place on the 4th of October, and it's basically going to be a day-long event where each of us are going to run a workshop on kind of our areas of expertise. So we're going to start off with Rachel, who's going to be looking at how to build and structure a great offer. Then Laura is going to be taking us through how to create awesome content that builds the know, like, trust factor with your audience. Then we're going to move on to my session, which is where we talk about messaging. So the great thing about this event is that all of the workshops connect. So it all starts with your offer. Then we'll be looking, like I said, at kind of creating that community and that buzz around it. And then I'm going to be talking you through how to build a messaging strategy that means that you can easily talk about your offer using specific words, not those kind of buzz phrases that people use, so that you can effectively communicate the value of what you're offering and make it easier to sell. And then finally, we'll move over to Ola, who will be talking about how to sell like a human.
That's brilliant, isn't it? And it's such a practical, value-packed event that we want folk who attend to really take action. That's why we're calling it Make It Happen, right? So it's not, while we will give input, we're going to give you things to do as well. So it's not going to be a case of like input, yeah, I'll do it. No, we're going to do some work in the sessions themselves, so you can start actually putting plans in place and continue that momentum afterwards, so you and your business can benefit from the input you're receiving.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you'll find that really beneficial in my session, because I know what it's like when you've attended a great workshop on copywriting. You've got all these ideas in the moment, but then you leave. So you leave Warsaw, you get home, and you sit down to start writing. You're like, oh no, I don't really know what to do or where to start. You're not going to have that problem, because we're going to actually start crafting some messaging in the workshop. So you will leave with at least a framework that you can then go away and develop once you're back home.
That's brilliant. And the exciting thing is that if you're watching this live now, the tickets are now available to everybody. So we did release them a few days ago to our folk who were on the wait list. So they've had first dibs and we've already sold a chunk of tickets. There's still tickets remaining at a really bargain rate of £89 for this very early bird offer, and you'll be able to see there's the link that's going along the ticker there below. If you want to type that into your URL, I've also added the link to LinkedIn earlier today if you just want to click on that and read more about what the event involves, and secure your ticket while there are spaces available at the very early bird rate. This is brilliant. I want to say, because there are folk joining us live today, if you have any questions, please say hello. Please drop them now. We'll be wrapping up soon, so this is your last opportunity to ask Lauren questions about your messaging for your business, or about how you communicate your latest offers and stuff. You can drop those in the chat now and we can make time for them. Or indeed, if you have questions about Make It Happen, happy to answer those as well while we're hanging out with you today. Well, I think this is brilliant, isn't it? What do you think about like Make It Happen in terms of like why we started it? Because I think that's something we haven't talked about much in these live series. Like, I mean, of course I know the story, but folk joining us today may not know. Like, would you like to give a little bit of the background story of like why we started this?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think between us, we've been to countless academic conferences. And then obviously we went to a couple earlier this year, and we noticed that there's more and more people who are going freelance or setting up their own teaching businesses. But a lot of the events out there are still very much focused on the academic side of teaching, which is great. I think everyone gets a lot from these events, but there's obviously a whole area that an area of topics that we want to be talking about, but we don't really have the space to. Of course, there are options to do that online, but one of the great things about kind of meeting in person is that you get more ideas, you make closer connections, it's easier to feel part of a community. So we got to thinking about how we could kind of recreate something like that in the business and marketing space, again, for people in the language world. And that's kind of where it all stemmed from. I think the planning kind of did a bit of a tour of Europe. We thought about some different places, and then we finally settled on Warsaw, which I think, from what I've read about the city, seems like a fantastic place for it because it's quite up and coming. And I think that kind of reflects what a lot of freelancers or business owners in the language world are as well, kind of working towards making something happen.
I couldn't agree more. And it's just, there's something special about people coming together in person to meet for a specific event and having a shared goal in mind. There's a whole energy that comes with that, which I am a big fan of online stuff. I really am. But I think, having spent a lot of the past few years online, I'm ready for an event like this. And speaking myself as a business owner as well, I think we all need these kind of spaces that are intentional for us to work on our businesses and celebrate them as well, rather than, I've been to some other conferences recently, and while they're fantastic on the academic side, I find myself scrapping and trying to find the other business owners just to kind of find opportunities to collaborate, find opportunities to get input and feedback. And it is kind of, it feels scrappy because I'm literally feel like I'm going on a treasure hunt for them, you know, because there's no intentional spaces for them. That's what I've really, really missed.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you can often feel like you're kind of on the outskirts of what's going on. I mean, I get that, especially because I'm not a teacher. So although I work within the language space, when I go to academic conferences, it's very much like, oh no, I have to explain, I'm not a teacher, this is what I do. So I can imagine that it's the same, even if you are teaching. The academic content is really useful what you're doing, that you always feel like you're kind of on the periphery a little bit because you're not working for a big number school. And you want to talk about these topics that kind of impact you every day.
Yeah. It can feel, I get that kind of awkward feeling as well, like when you're at academic events, and I'm not a teacher anymore either. I'm like running a media company, and you're trying to kind of explain and have those conversations, and you feel like you're trying to shoehorn yourself into conversations. We're like, hey, do you want some podcasts? You know, I feel exactly. it's a bit weird.
Like coming across like you're people. I remember like I went to one, it was a really big conference in London last year, and I introduced me and what I do, and then this guy just said, oh, so you're here to sell me something? I was like, no, that's not what I'm doing at all. I'm here to try and, you know, make connections and things. But yeah, it's that kind of awkward feeling that you're there but you're not supposed to be there.
Yeah. And yet, obviously, the expertise we have on offer and the workshops that we planned and the whole event, it is designed to serve people, isn't it, and their businesses. And that's why we've created Make It Happen, is to invite you to this space where you can learn more about our expertise and we can share it with you, so you can really gain a lot from that. It's a good investment of your time and money, of course, going to Warsaw on the 4th of October to join us, where you can learn and reflect on key skills that will help to make your business thrive, basically. Lauren, I don't think we have any questions today. It's a quiet one, but we are obviously hanging out in people's lunchtime here in Europe. So I really appreciate everybody hanging out and dropping in on this live. If you're watching the replay and you feel, gosh, I really wish I asked a question, then you can still drop that in the comments, and Lauren or I will get back to you happily to give you more information or answer any questions you have. It's been lovely hanging out this lunchtime. Thanks, Lauren.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Have a lovely day, everybody. Thank you. Bye.